This is the third meeting of the Standing Committee on Status of Women. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on Tuesday, February the 4th, the committee will begin its study of intimate partner and domestic violence in Canada. Given the ongoing pandemic situation and in light of the recommendations from public health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on October 19th, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, the following is recommended for all those attending the meeting in person. So specifically to you, Dominique, this is what you need to do. Anyone with symptoms should participate by Zoom and not attend the meeting in person. Everyone must maintain 2-meter physical distancing, whether seated or standing. Everyone must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room. It is recommended in the strongest possible terms that the members wear their masks at all times, including when not seated. or included when seated. Non-medical masks, which provide better clarity over cloth masks, are available in the room. Everyone present must maintain proper hand hygiene by using the hand sanitizer in the room entrance. Committee rooms are cleaned before and after each meeting. To maintain this, everyone is encouraged to clean surfaces such as the desk, chair, and microphone with those provided disinfecting wipes when vacating or taking a seat. For those virtually participating today, I would like to take an outline to a few rules to follow. You may speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available to this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. If interpretation is lost, please inform me immediately and we will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming the proceedings. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your mic will be controlled as normal by the proceedings and verification officers. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. Before we welcome the witnesses today, I do have a few administrative pieces that we need to discuss today. Everybody should have received some documents. You should have received a document looking at the budget, a copy of the budget for this study on intimate partner and domestic violence in Canada. Has everybody received that? If I could just get a show of hands that everybody has received that, fantastic. And is it the will of the committee to adopt the budget of $7,050 for the study of intimate partner violence and domestic violence in Canada? Can I have someone move this motion? Mark, you're good with this? Can I have a show of hands on support for this budget of $7,050? If everybody could raise their hand in support. And if you're not supporting it, please raise your hand. Anyone, those not supporting this budget? Clerk, it looks like it's a unanimous decision that we can spend this money today. So thank you very much. We're going to also now turn on to the press release. I would ask that if I could have somebody, I always do pick on Emanuela. Emanuela, if you could look at the French version for us to ensure that the French version is excellent as well. I would like to review our media releases that will be going out specifically around this study. This has been put together, and thank you very, very much for putting this together from our analysts and our clerk. I would like to look at the English version first and see if there are any concerns with the English version of this media release. Seeing no concerns, I'm going to ask, are there any concerns? I'm sorry, I should have asked you, Andrian. You're always having to speak French. I'm so sorry. Emanuela, Andrian, Marcus Ray, Dominique, if you guys could look at the English or the French version and let me know that it is good and is matching the words of the English version or is on the same. Leila's good with that. Do I see any comments, concerns on the English or French version? Emanuela, are you still reading?
I am still reading the French version, yeah.
Once I know Emanuela's, yeah.
But so far I don't see any issues. Okay. Andriane is probably better than I am, though.
Adrienne, do you see any issues?
Moi, pas vu de problème avec la version française.
No problem at all with the French version.
Oh, wonderful. So if I could have a show of hands, all those in favor of this media release, all those in favor? Anyone opposed to this media release? To the clerk, we're good to go. We're good for action. So thank you very, very much. It's great that we could get through these so quickly. And today,
en fait, Madame la Présidente,
Madam Chair, there is something that is missing in French.
It has been seen, although it's passed. Okay, go ahead, Adrienne.
The fifth bullet point, we are talking the point about coercion for intimate violence, but there's like something about other tools of public policy. There's a small bit missing there.
C'est important parce que c'est.
It's important because it's an addition for that bullet point. It should be added to the press release. So that's the fifth bullet point.
I want to ensure that Adrienne, the information she's receiving is already in the English version. Is there something that's missing in the English version, or was that something that was missing in the French version only? Analysts, go ahead, Dominique.
It is not in the English version or the French. We just summarized, so this is a part we left out, but we will add it in both languages.
Can I get consent from the committee to add that in both French and English? Is everybody okay with that? Go ahead, Leila, yes.
Can we just confirm what is being added in both languages before we proceed?
Analyst, I'm going to pass that back to you, Dominique.
So in the original motion, I think it was point D, it mentioned legislation regarding coercive and controlling behaviors, as well as other public policy tools. We summarized the information in the press release, so public policy tools is not in the press release at the moment. So if I'm understanding correctly, the suggestion now is to add that to the last bullet point, the fifth bullet point in the press release.
Are there any objections to that? I see it does match what we were studying. Is there any objections to that? Seeing none, can I get all of those in favor? Awesome. Fantastic. Great. So let's move on to this great study that we're going to be starting. I just will let everybody know I am working with my son's Casio watch it looks like from 1980. So I will be making sure that I time everybody for their proper times. But today is fantastic because we do have some wonderful people that will be our witnesses today. And I would like to start by welcoming, and it's funny because I'm looking at my thing going, what part am I on? I would like to start welcoming our panel of witnesses from the Department of Women and Gender and Equality. We have Alea Butt, who is the Assistant Deputy Minister for Strategic Policy, Annette Arsenault, the Director General for Gender-Based Violence Policy, and Lisa Smiley, who is the Director General, Research Results and Delivery Branch. It is wonderful that you have joined us today. I have a red note here, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you, Clerk. Do we have the Senior Counsel and the Director and General Counsel? Are they here with us today as well?
Yes, Ms. Levman is here, as well as Ms. Farid.
Oh, and Mrs. Farid, thank you so much. We also have with us from the Department of Justice. They will not be making opening remarks. I've got this noted here. Natalia Levman, who is the Senior Counsel for the Criminal Law Policy Section, as well as Claire Farid, the Director and General Counsel, Family and Children's Law Team Policy Sector. I'm going to just turn the floor over now to the first speaker. And if there may be a different order that you would like to go. So if you do want a different order, please let me know. But to Ms. Butt, I'm going to pass the floor over to you for 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Avant de commencer, je tiens à souligner.
Before beginning, I would like to let you know that I am on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. I am happy to talk to you, people.
For me to participate in your study of intimate partner violence and domestic violence in Canada. Je suis la sous-ministre adjointe des politiques stratégiques à femmes et égalité des genres.
I appreciate the interest of this committee on the research of this issue that we are working with. Everyone in Canada has the right to be free from violence. However, 44% of women, 6.2 million women, will have experienced some form of intimate partner violence of their lifetime.
Most prevalent forms of gender-based violence. GBV is one of the most pervasive, deadly, and deeply rooted human rights violations of our time. It is also preventable and a significant barrier to achieving gender equality. The data on intimate partner violence paints a disturbing picture. In the last year alone, over 225,000 women experienced intimate partner violence. That means that 618 women in Canada every day lived in fear, experiencing violence by a partner. Younger women between the ages of 15 and 44 years experience the highest levels of intimate partner violence of any age group. In addition, Indigenous women are 2 times more likely to experience spousal violence than non-Indigenous women. People with disabilities, LGBTQ2 individuals, women living in the territories, and women living with low income are more likely to experience intimate partner violence in their lifetime. And let's not forget that for every woman impacted, there is a family and often children impacted too. Preventing and addressing gender-based violence is a national priority, and numerous actions are underway that provide a solid foundation to build upon, including responding to the reported increased level of GBV during the COVID-19 pandemic. Since April 2020, the Government of Canada, through Women and Gender Equality Canada, has provided emergency funding to support over 1,200 organizations providing a range of GBV supports and services across Canada. To date, more than 1.3 million people have had a safe place to turn because of this funding. The pandemic has reinforced the need for and urgency of a national action plan to end gender-based violence. To this end, Women and Gender Equality Canada is working closely with provincial and territorial governments to develop this plan, building on what we have heard from stakeholders and Indigenous partners. Important steps towards the National Action Plan to end gender-based violence have been achieved in recent years and months. At their 38th annual meeting held in January 2021, the federal, provincial, territorial ministers responsible for the status of women endorsed the Joint Declaration for a Canada Free of Gender-Based Violence, which confirmed the common vision, principles, and goals for responding to GBV. This joint declaration provides the overarching framework for the plan currently under development. In December 2021, at their 39th annual meeting, ministers agreed to continue their commitment and collaboration to advance towards this national action plan. To support this effort, the Government of Canada is investing $601.3 million over 5 years, starting this fiscal year, to advance towards the national action plan to end GBV. Women and Gender Equality is investing $415 million of this funding in the following areas: to support shelters, sexual assault centers, women's organizations, and other organizations providing supports and services to those experiencing GBV, to enhance the GBV program, including funding to engage men and boys and support at-risk populations of survivors, to establish a dedicated secretariat to coordinate ongoing work toward the development and implementation of the GBV National Action Plan, to advance important research and knowledge mobilization, to support crisis hotlines, and lastly, to support the important work the government is doing on murdered, missing, and missing Indigenous women and girls. WAGE is also investing $55 million to bolster the capacity of Indigenous women and 2S LGBTQIA+ organizations to specifically provide GBV prevention programming. This call for proposals to access this funding is currently open. All of these initiatives are building off the federal GBV strategy launched in 2017. I would like to highlight a few of the Government of Canada's key achievements for the committee today. Since 2018, the department has invested over $30 million in GBV research, including a new national survey that provided us with our first comprehensive understanding of intimate partner violence in Canada, with an innovative index developed by the University of Western Ontario. Also in 2018, the government launched the GBV Knowledge Center's online platform, which brings together program and research evidence and resources to enable evidence-based action on GBV. The platform also includes key information on resources available for those affected by GBV. And since 2015, the government has invested over $1 billion to prevent and address GBV and committed an additional $601 million through Budget 2021. Of our own investments in that period, WAGE provided more than 1,600 organizations with $730 million to support more than 500 projects working to prevent GBV and support survivors and their families. Because of these projects, nearly 2.6 million women gained access to programs and supports related to GBV, including access to counseling, court services, and trauma-informed victim services. An additional million people gained skills and knowledge to prevent GBV to support those affected. I'm getting the signal. I'm confident this committee study will make a valuable contribution to the efforts to end GBV. I look forward to reviewing your study and applying it to the GBV NAP. Thank you.
No, thank you, Ms. Butt, for recognizing. So whenever the green pen starts circling, that's my winding it up. So thank you so much. That's wonderful. I'm going to now pass it over to Annette Arsenault. Annette, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Oh, it was only myself, Madam Chair, that was going to be, yes.
Well, goodness gracious, Ms. Butt. You know something? Did I really? Okay, I'm gonna break here. Did I steal all of your time? Do you still have a lot left?
No, that's okay. I ran through it fairly quickly. I'm the only one making remarks on behalf of WAGE today. And as you mentioned, justice officials that are here with us today are not making remarks, but are here to field any questions you may have specific to the areas of the work that they do.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. So we actually have all of our witnesses who are going to be here being able to take these questions. I'm going to just since this is going to be our first official meeting, actually having witnesses for the 44th Parliament, I'll just kind of give you guys, everybody, a breakdown once again as we start these meetings. The first round, everybody is going to be given 6 minutes. So that 6 minutes includes the questions and the answers within that 6 minutes. And of course, you're going to start seeing the green pen spinning around. In the second round, we have 5 minutes. That will be, it will be 5 minutes for the CPC and the Liberal spokesperson, and it will be 2.5 minutes for the Bloc and the NDP. And then we go back to a 5-minute round for the third round. So we're going to start today's questions. I'm going to pass the floor over to Dominique Vien. Dominique, you have 6 minutes for questions.
Merci. Thank you. I'm pleased to be with you. So this is the first time I am here in a federal committee, so I'm a newbie, but I have been in this kind of situation before. This is a very interesting presentation. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for being with us. Lots of investments have been announced. You spoke about $601 million, who is going to be spent as well. What is the focus? So what are the measurable results and deliverables that you have achieved with that strategy, thanks to those investments that have been made?
Sorry, are you directing that at one? And I don't know, maybe Ms. Butt, are you going to take the answer perhaps? You could maybe direct it to who you want, or would you like Ms. Butt to answer that question?
Peut-être que Madame Butt peut répondre.
Ms. Butt could answer the question or redirect the question depending on who can answer.
Okay, I can take the question if that's all right. So there's two different things here that we might want to talk about. One is the strategy that was launched in 2017. It's time, and that was the federal strategy that was launched to prevent and address GBV. So in terms of that federal strategy, the government had invested over $219 million over 6 years and $42 million ongoing. And that was to do to make sure that the federal family was coming together to move forward on that particular approach. There were 7 departments that were involved at the time: Public Safety, Public Health Agency of Canada. You'll be hearing from them as part of panel 2, Department of National Defence, Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada, the RCMP, and Justice, and ourselves. So one of the key things that came out of that strategy in particular is the GBV Knowledge Center, which is housed within WAGE. It is the focal point of the GBV strategy and is responsible for governance and coordination, reporting and evaluation evaluation, data and research, and knowledge mobilization. So I can give you a little bit more information in terms of the results that you're asking for. Since its inception, over 170 resources were added to this online platform, which was visited more than 64,000 times in 2020-2021. During the same period, the Knowledge Center hosted 11 webinars featuring researchers, GBV and knowledge mobilization experts, public servants, and funding recipients. There were more than 1,400 participants from federal organizations, provincial territorial governments, academic institutions, national and international non-government organizations that attended. In addition, there was approximately $50 million that's being invested in roughly 60 projects to support the development and implementation of promising practices to address gaps in supports for victims and survivors and their families.
Madame,
yeah.
Madame Bott, Madame Bott, j'aurais...
Mrs. Butt, maybe I would want a more specific answer. I understand all the money that has been invested or announced, but when we talk about concrete measures that led to real results, we're talking about 44% of women that are touched by violence. So you had all these announcements, these strategies, but in real terms, when will we reduce this percentage, which is horrible? Are we getting there with all the money that has been invested?
I'm just going to ask my colleague, who's the DG responsible for research results and delivery, to jump in and provide a response in terms of outcomes.
Thank you for the question. As we all know, reducing rates of gender-based violence is going to take some time. On the road to that, we've achieved some concrete results. So for example, with the funding from the federal gender-based violence strategy given to WAGE alone, our department alone, we've provided funding to more than 1,600 organizations. And because of that, almost 2.6 million women gained access to programs and supports related to gender-based violence, like counseling, like court services, like trauma-informed victim services. And in addition to that, nearly 1 million people gained skills and knowledge to help prevent gender-based violence and to support those who are impacted by gender-based violence. And then just during the pandemic, we've invested $100 million in more than 1,200 organizations, shelters, sexual assault centers, and other organizations providing critical gender-based violence supports. And more than 1.3...
Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much. Now that leads me to tackle the issue of funding. Everywhere in Canada and in Quebec, there are some organizations that do offer support.
Although this is where we all learn on the first round, the time can be taken very, very quickly. So to both sides, your time has run out, I'm afraid. I will move it over to Sonia for her 6 minutes, and then we'll go from there. 6 minutes, Sonia.
Madam Chair, I think we have other person.
Emanuela, I'm sorry, I was looking at round. Emanuela, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the witnesses who are here today to help inform this committee on something extremely important, such as gender-based violence. I agree that gender-based violence is not something, violence against women is not something that will end in just a couple of years. Of course, this is a long-term national strategy, and I can see that there are 3 pillars: prevention, support for survivors, and legal and justice, and helping people navigate the justice system. With regards to the funding that you mentioned, Ms. Butt, of 600 million, you mentioned that about 415 million has gone recently to support shelters, to enhance the gender-based violence program, and you mentioned programs including men and boys as well. So I was wondering if you can maybe point us in the direction of what specifically is being done to help men and boys get involved in finding a solution to ending gender-based violence, and if you can let us know to what extent we're including education at a very young age as well, because I think that in order to stop this from being an issue in the future, we need to nip it in the bud when kids are still in school. So if you can maybe let us know if there's anything being done at that level.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So you're right. So the 105 million that I mentioned that was provided in budget 2021 does specifically say that we can use that to do work with men and boys. However, I just want to mention that that is building upon work that was started back in 2018 when we did hold a series of roundtable discussions on how to engage men and boys in advancing gender equality, which did lead to a What We Heard report that was published later on and is publicly available. The report highlighted some main themes that were raised during those discussions, including identifying persisting behaviors that contribute to inequality, challenging and changing negative norms, attitudes, and behaviors through accountability and healing, sustaining efforts to engage men and boys in equality through building networks, sharing knowledge, and taking action. And ensuring accountability and being aware of resource scarcity. So meaning that engaging men and boys should not hinder funding to women and girls. We did invest previously, prior to this 101 million that was announced in budget 2021. We provided funding to a key group of organizations. So I'll give you a couple of examples and I'll just see if my colleagues can find any that are specific to education. And if we can't, we can come back to you on that. We did fund Next Gen Men to build a network of pro-feminist leaders, Alberta Council of Women's Shelters to promote sports figures as role models to increase awareness on GBV, Catalyst Canada to support men as disruptors of sexism in the workplace. We are currently funding the University of Calgary to identify strategies, practical approaches, and supporting evidence on how to engage men and boys in advancing gender equality and preventing GBV. So that work is expected to wrap up this fall. Another important initiative is funding of White Ribbon to support the development, implementation, and evaluation of a social marketing campaign to inspire men and young men across Canada to change their attitudes and behaviors. So those are just some key examples that I had with me today. But as I mentioned, you did have a question specifically around education, and I will just check if we have anything handy. We do. I'm going to turn to Lisa. She's been able to pull it up.
Thank you.
And we'll go to Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you. WAGE recently provided nearly 700,000 to the Sex Information and Education Council of Canada, who's taking action to ensure that sexual health education programs, comprehensive sexual health education in schools, for example, is more effective in addressing the harmful gender norms at a very young age. So influencing norms and attitudes that hopefully over the longer term will reduce gender-based violence and intimate partner violence in particular.
I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you very much. Another question regarding the pandemic. Obviously, more women have required shelters in the last few years because of the pandemic, being stuck at home with perpetrators of violence. Has there been an influx in support from WAGE towards these shelters in the last 2 years, specifically ever since the pandemic started? Because I know that shelters are really at their wits' end and they're not able to service the women that are currently needing their support.
Short answer is absolutely. So since the pandemic has started, WAGE has invested nearly 100 million in more than 1,200 shelters, sexual assault centers, and other organizations providing supports to people experiencing gender-based violence. And because of that, more than 1.3 million women and children have had somewhere to turn during the pandemic. With that funding, almost 450 organizations were able to hire new staff. 500 organizations were able to extend staff shifts to respond to increased demand. Over 530 organizations were able to expand their programs and services. Over 200 organizations were able to acquire new shelter beds. And nearly 100 organizations were able to implement childcare services. So our funding is having an impact.
Thank you very much. I see my time is
Awesome.
up.
Thank you so much. And you guys are right on time. Perfect. We're now going to turn it over for 6 minutes to Adrienne LaRoche. Adrienne, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you for the civil servants for all the work you do day after day at this department. And I see there are also people from the Department of Justice. I would like to offer my sympathy to the families. 18 women were killed in 2021. 18 women killed by their partner. So I present my condolences to these families. There is a transpartisan committee that has been set up and presented a lot of recommendations. All parties work together on this issue. So following these recommendations, Public Safety in Quebec and the Secretariat of Status of the Women invested a lot of money for shelters and organizations supporting women. But there's this issue of transfer between Ottawa and the provinces and territories. Where are we at in this issue of transfer? Has the money really been transferred to the government of Quebec? Maybe someone from the department can answer the question. Someone from Wage.
And just confirm that since the onset of the pandemic, in terms of the emergency funding we've been talking about, we've been working with 3 key partners to roll out the funding at record speed: Canadian Women's Foundation, Women's Shelters Canada, and the Government of Quebec. So I can certainly confirm that there was a portion of funding from the original $100 million that went directly to the Government of Quebec to roll out to shelters, sexual assault centers, and organizations supporting women who are experiencing violence in Quebec. An additional $44.4 million out of the new money, the $200 million coming out of budget 2021, so $44.4 million directly to the Government of Quebec, again, to roll out to continue to provide emergency funding and support. The original money, the $100 million, was for those organizations to simply be able to keep their doors open, to buy hand sanitizers, personal protective equipment, to be able to distance, hotels for women that needed to isolate. Things are evolving. We're working very closely with our partners. Things are evolving. The new money is flexible. It's being used for evolving needs. We had originally thought that we'd be moving to a post-pandemic environment before we all heard about Omicron. Unfortunately, the funding is still being used for some very, very basic needs, but we're trying to be as flexible as possible to meet those needs. But yes, I can confirm the money is with the Government of Quebec.
Listen, I have a secondary question. These investments took a while to be transferred to Quebec. I did talk with people from the department last year, so there were some delays. So has there been investments in other areas? Did you make sure with provinces and territories that you knew what the needs of the provinces were?
I can respond to that. Yes, absolutely. We're lucky enough at Women and Gender Equality to have a very, very great relationship through our FPT, Federal Provincial Territorial Forum, of ministers responsible for the status of women. And that group was absolutely critical in us even being able to identify shelters, sexual assault centers, and organizations across the country at the onset of the pandemic. Typically, Wage is not the key funder of shelters across the country in terms of operating costs. It was identified as a need. So even just to be able to pull together lists of organizations across the country, we had to work with our provincial and territorial counterparts to make that happen. We have a great relationship, and that work happened as quickly as possible to get the money out. I have to say that in terms of the emergency funding, in terms of feedback from our stakeholder organizations, we probably received the most positive testimonials with respect to this pot of funding than any other, because of the speed at which it was dispersed through our third-party organizations, because of the flexibility that was provided, and because we reduced reporting burden on the application process. The budget 2021 funding, which was announced, I can confirm the agreement was put in place with Quebec last summer. I believe it was August. So we are always working to put those agreements in place as quickly as possible. And from our perspective, we have a great working relationship with the government of Quebec and with all of the other PTs through the ministerial forum.
We actually only have 8 seconds left there, Adrian, so I will add 8 seconds to the next thing if go longer. Leah, I'm going to pass the floor over to you. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair, and welcome guests to our committee today. My first question is for Madame Butt. You spoke about support for places of refuge for women and diverse gendered individuals fleeing violence. How many of those spaces were low barrier? Oh, you're on mute.
And you may.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just wasn't sure I understood the question. How many of the spaces that we funded? Do you mean the shelters?
Shelters, yeah, were low barrier.
Low barrier? I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that and get back to you. We can certainly get back to the committee once we've done an analysis of those numbers. There are 1,200 organizations that were funded with that money, so we'd have to look into that and get back to you.
Yes, I asked that because, many women, for example, experience or with addictions, for example, often aren't able to use shelter systems. This costs lives, we know that. And so, I think it's important to identify how many shelters are actually low barrier so that all women and diverse genders are able to access. We know that rates of violence, as you know, I mean, this is your area, that rates of violence against women and diverse gender have increased as much as 400 times in some areas. I know my riding at Winnipeg Centre, has a crisis of violence against particularly Indigenous women and girls. We still don't have a national action plan. Even though we see a rapid increase of violence 400 times. When will the National Action Plan be released? What date?
All right, thank you. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to give you a date in particular, but what I can tell you was that in 2019, the Minister of Women and Gender Equality was mandated to build on the ongoing work of the Canada Strategy to Prevent and Address Gender-Based Violence. Since that time, a lot of work has been done, and there have been some key milestones reached. And this is the National Action Plan means that we're working with provinces and territories to develop this collaboratively. So it was in January 2021 that the FPT ministers endorsed the Joint Declaration for a Canada Free of Gender-Based Violence, which really confirmed the common vision, principles, and goals for responding to gender-based violence. That was one of the...
I asked that because it was 2019. It's now 2022. Rates of violence have gone up 400 times, and we really need a plan quickly. So if I would really appreciate if your department could get back to the committee to give a really clear timeline of when we'll see this national action plan. I think it would be helpful. I have another question. So no secret, Indigenous women and girls, 12 times more likely to go missing or murdered than the rest of the population, 12 times. this was actually reported in the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls that was released in June 2019. It's now 2022. We still don't have an action plan in response to the 231 calls to justice that came out of the inquiry. The crisis persists. When will this action plan be released?
Leah, could you, I think we're having a little bit of a problem with your mic. Could you just try to put it a little closer to your nose if you don't mind?
Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So on that one, there will be witnesses from Crown Indigenous Relations and Indigenous Services Canada on panel number 2. So I would just maybe leave it to them to speak specifically about the MMIWG question that you have. But what I can tell you in terms of the important work that we're doing at WAGE, we have been working very, very closely with our colleagues in those departments, and the 25 and the 55 million that I mentioned earlier in terms of the call for proposals that's currently open, that is funding that is specifically targeted to Indigenous women's and 2S LGBTQIA+ organizations to bolster their capacity, specifically to help in the prevention of GBV. So that is one important piece that we're delivering at WAGE, but does fit with the federal pathway in response to MMIWG. But more broadly, in terms of the MMIWG plan, as I mentioned, the panel number 2 will have 2 officials from both Crown Indigenous Relations and Indigenous Services Canada present.
Okay, thank you. Thank
30
you
seconds for question and answer.
Okay. And in terms of findings regionally, in terms of funding that was released, how much funding was provided to Manitoba shelters?
So definitely I can jump in here. I don't have the number right in front of me, but what I can confirm is the 1,200 organizations that were funded with the 100 million, all of that information is publicly available on our website, broken down by province. You'll see the name of every single organization that we funded in your province, along with the amount of money they received. What we can do is we can follow up with the committee. Okay.
Nope.
And give you the link.
So absolutely. Following up the committee, perhaps at the end of the meeting, there are certain things that we may request of some of our witnesses today, and we'll speak to our clerk, ensure that we get everything done. And looking at the time, one of the most important things is we will be switching over to another panel, and we need to do sound checks. So I'm just going to do this on the fly. I'm going to be taking the round 2. I'm going to be reducing Leila, you're down to 4 minutes. Anita, you're down to 4 minutes. Andrian, down to 1.5 minutes. Leah, down to 1.5 minutes, just so that we can get the entire round done. So I'm going to pass it over for 4 minutes to Leila.
All right, well, I guess I'm going to have to speak quickly. Ms. Butts, you touched on the disparity that you guys see in violence in a variety of spaces in your opening comments. Is it fair to say that there is a rural-urban divide when it comes to gender-based violence? Yes or no?
I can take that question, Madam Chair. The short answer is yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. I come from Fort McMurray, which is evidently a rural part of the world, and especially in Canada. And so it's something that is quite concerning. I would ask that rather than just sending us the website, if you could please send the documentation to the committee with all the shelters all across the country that have received the funds. And if it was possible, if you could also send us every shelter that applied that did not receive the funds. I think that would be helpful to be able to see how you are specifically trying to make things better for our rural communities, and specifically Indigenous communities that tend to be in those rural areas. I was also wondering if you guys could point us in the direction to best practices that exist either within Canada or around the world.
Okay, so just really quickly, maybe we probably don't have enough time, so maybe I can say that we will certainly follow up with the committee. We'll send you the full list of the 1,200. And I just want to mention something that's really important. We have worked really hard with our partners at Women's Shelters Canada and Canadian Women's Foundation to make sure everybody gets the funding they need during this emergency period. There will be another call for proposals that's open in case absolutely anyone was missed. So if you're worried about a particular organization in your writing, we can certainly make sure that that they are not left behind if they're, able to apply for those calls for proposals. I don't know how much time we have left, but maybe we can get back with respect to. Okay, did you have anything to add right now, or we'll follow up on best practices?
Perhaps quickly, in terms of some best practices, WAGE has provided $1 million in funding to Women's Shelters Canada, who produced an interactive map of shelters. And because of that, over 75,000 people
I understand,
were able...
but in our study, we are trying to find legislative and public policy solutions. So which, it's not about funding at this point, it's who is doing good things and what can we do to replicate it? It's not necessarily just spending the money.
On the legislative side, I'll turn to my justice colleagues in terms of identifying any best practices.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that referral. I'm not sure how much time I have, but I'm here today to speak to what I know the committee is interested in, which is existing criminal coercive control legislation that's in place in various jurisdictions, UK being one of them. Is that something that you would like to hear about? I'm seeing the nodding. Great. But before I comment on the criminal coercive control legislation, I'd also like to note that the concept of coercive control has been used in other areas of the law as well. For example, family law, and my colleague Claire Farid is here today, and she can comment on that if that's of interest to you, and I think it probably would be. So in the criminal context, coercive control offenses criminalize a pattern of conduct.
Ms. Levan, we are at our 4 minutes already. I'm very sorry.
No
I would
problem.
ask that question. I don't know if we'll be able to have the opportunity, but there could be some written requests after that. Unfortunately, sorry about this time. It's just so short, and I know how important it is. I'm going to pass it over to Anita. Anita, 4 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. And my first question is to Ms. Butt. I know when I was on this committee in 2017 and we did the gender-based violence against young women and girls study, there was a lot of discussion about whether we should be focusing on a federal action plan or a national action plan. The difference being the federal one is the areas that are specifically in federal jurisdiction and could be done immediately, whereas the national one means having to coordinate with all the other levels of government, including provinces and territories. I know that you mentioned in your opening remarks the gender-based violence strategy, the whole of government approach. I don't want to leave it to seem as though because we haven't launched a national action plan that means that there hasn't been anything done. I wonder if you could elaborate on the federal side, the gender-based violence strategy, and then also how is it going with the provinces and territories? How receptive are they, and how might COVID have impacted the ability to be able to do those negotiations in order to get to the national action plan?
Thank you so much for your questions. I had started to touch on some of the achievements earlier of the federal strategy when I was talking about the 7 departments involved and some of the good work that's being done by the Knowledge Center. So other notable achievements on the federal strategy is that we were able to launch 3 new national surveys establishing baselines on different forms of GBV and critical data gaps. We know how important that is. And there is a need to continue to fund research so we know what the issues are and we can appropriately target them. Funding for community-based research to better understand the impacts of GBV and prevention efforts. We've developed and tested promising practices in prevention and support for victims and survivors in areas including sexual violence, child maltreatment, teen and youth dating violence, and gender-based violence in post-secondary institutions specifically, and also human trafficking. We have enhanced cultural awareness training for RCMP officers and staff across the country, and we're enhancing supports for victims and survivors of GBV within the Canadian Armed Forces. Those are just some of the good things that are coming out of the federal strategy. In terms of the National Action Plan, you're right. We are working with provinces and territories areas across the country, and that takes time. We're also engaging with many stakeholders. Since 2020, we've had a series of engagement sessions with approximately 1,500 individuals from civil society. We've engaged with the Ministerial Advisory Council on Gender-Based Violence, with our Indigenous partners. We have our Deputy Minister has an Indigenous Women's Circle, which has been critical to ensuring that there is an Indigenous pillar within our National Action Plan. So there is a lot of significant effort that has gone into the development of this National Action Plan. And overall, I want to say that the collaboration has been great with PTs. I will mention that Quebec supports the general principles of the Joint Declaration and the plan, but is wanting to continue the fight against gender-based violence by prioritizing its own actions and measures. So I'll just make sure that I'm clear about that point, but has been at the table and supportive of the work that we're doing. So that work is proceeding. And just to also address the question you raised about the pandemic, absolutely, we had to pivot. April, March 2020, we absolutely had to pivot with the FPT Forum, got $300 million that we're now rolling out. As I mentioned, $100 million already out to the network of shelters. So it was really just making sure that the emergency needs were met while we continued to move forward on the good work we're doing on the National Action Plan.
It's awesome. Anita, I'm sorry you don't, but we're going to pass it over to Adrienne for 90 seconds, then to Leah. These will be our last two questions. Thank you. Go ahead, Adrienne.
Oui. Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair, a national plan is good, but 10 years is too long. Ms. Levman, I would like to hear you on the Justice Department, and Quebec has ideas, and I would like to know what's being done. There's the electric bracelet pilot project. Can you tell us more about criminal coercion and what's being done for violence against women?
Question and for the opportunity to speak to criminal coercive control offenses, which criminalize a pattern of conduct that serves to entrap the victim, who is a current or former intimate partner of the accused, which eliminates their sense of freedom. A broad range of coercive and controlling conduct may be employed, but the focus is on how the pattern of that conduct serves to subjugate, not the individual incidents wherein abusers exercise control. That's because coercive control is concerned with the cumulative impact of the abuser's conduct on the victim. In this respect, coercive control legislation is unlike traditional criminal law, which generally responds to specific incidents of wrongful conduct like assault, sexual assault, or uttering threats. So coercive control criminal legislation has been implemented in the United Kingdom in 2015, in Scotland in 2018, and in Ireland in 2019. I can provide the committee with information on those offenses and also on the Home Office's March 2021 evaluation of the UK offence.
Thank you so much. I believe the entire committee would really appreciate if you could do so. I'd really appreciate that. We're going to move on now to our last round of question. And Leah, you've got the floor for 90 seconds.
Thank you so much. I know I don't have a lot of time here. I know, Madame, but you spoke about support for men, programs for men and boys, you know, in terms of assisting them with nonviolence. I'm wondering if you could provide an example of one of those programs and what they're doing.
Okay, sure. Yes, I have a couple of examples that I shared. One of the important ones that's in play right now is funding for the University of Calgary to identify strategies, practical approaches, and supporting evidence on how to engage men and boys in advancing gender equality and preventing GBV. That one's going to wrap up this fall, so that'll be an important one to watch out for. Also funding for White Ribbon to support the development, implementation, and evaluation of a social marketing campaign to inspire men and young men across Canada to change their attitudes and behaviors, to seek help when needed, and embrace their roles as allies and change makers. And I think Lisa had mentioned an important one. I can go back to her because that was specific to education.
It was the Sex Information and Education Council of Canada that I had mentioned previously, but since we've already mentioned that, I want to mention one more that's really important, and it's the FOXY program in the Northwest Territories. Phenomenal program that's won an Arctic Award for the impact it's had. It's a program to engage Indigenous youth, particularly men and boys, on gender equality. And they bring folks together for a week and do education. And it's had a huge impact in the territory on gender norms and attitudes.
Well, this has been one heck of an incredible committee. Thank you so much. I know our time is very, very quick. I would really like to thank Elia, Annette, Lisa, Natalia, and Claire. Thank you so much for joining us, our committee today. We are going to take a very, very short break because we're going to be getting our next panels directly at 2. So I'd ask any one of our witnesses to go ahead and log off, and we'll get our new witnesses on. Take that quick break if you need. I'll be back on for 2. Thanks, everyone. to our second panel. So thank you so much. And somehow my thing will not come up right now. It's being a little crazy. So I'm going to just be reading from some other notes here. So I'd like to welcome our second panel. Today we have 3 different people coming from Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs. We have Chantal Marin-Comeau, who is the Director General of the Missing and Murdered Women and Girls Secretariat. Indigenous Services, Ian Kenny, who is the Director General, Social Policy and Programs Branch. And from Public Health Agency of Canada, we have Karen McKinnon, who is the Director General, Centre for Health Promotion. So to all of our panelists, I will be granting you 5 minutes each, and I have my little Casio watch from the 80s so that I will be timing you. So I am actually going to pass the floor over. So Chantal, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
So thank you very much. Bonjour and good afternoon. Dans un premier temps, j'aimerais vous remercier.
First of all, I would like to thank you to give me the opportunity to talk about something that's very dear to my heart, gender-based violence. I am here from Gatineau in the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. My name is Chantal Marin-Comeau.
Work regarding missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and to us LGBTQI people, and brings together over 23 departments involved in this initiative. However, addressing this tragedy needs much more than the federal government. It needs a whole of Canada approach that puts Indigenous families, survivors, and communities at the heart of all of these efforts. It also needs efforts by every level of government, Indigenous, federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal, in order to achieve the substantial and transformative change. C'est pourquoi qu'aujourd'hui, j'ai le plaisir de vous...
This is how I will be introducing some of the initiatives currently happening.
2016, l'enquête nationale sur les femmes et les filles autochtones disparues et assassinées a été...
In 2016, the inquiry was launched and the report was published in 2019. There were many calls to action, calls to justice. Some recommendations were about infrastructure, structure of protection, violence against it.
Indigenous-led National Action Plan for MMIWG was released. It includes contributions by Indigenous families and survivors, First Nations, Inuit, Métis, Urban, to SLGBTQI+, data and research communities, Indigenous organizations, and the federal, provincial, and territorial governments. Some priorities identified by Indigenous partners in the National Action Plan include those related to infrastructure, housing, shelters, violence prevention programs, safe communities, public awareness, and trauma-informed approaches to support families and survivors. The federal pathway is the Government of Canada's contribution to the National Action Plan, and it was also launched on June 3rd, 2021. The pathway does acknowledge that colonialism, racism, sexism, and ableism have really created systemic inequities for Indigenous peoples, notably women, girls, and gender diverse people. Puis pour donner suite à ces engagements, le gouvernement prend des mesures.
The federal government has made investments and taken initiatives to address that issue. The federal made important investments after the interim report, also after the economic statement of the fall 2022, and investments as well in budget 2021. Some legislative measures have been adopted as well, including the act on the...
We have a little bit of popping. Clerk, is it, her mic seems to be in the area, correct? And the translators are getting a little popping.
Oh, apologize.
Can we do a quick sound check?
Oui, bonjour. The government has also adopted policies that contribute to ending gender and race-based violence. And these
better for the translator? Is that better for the translator?
Yes, appears to be. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. So
No
carry on.
worries.
If you want to go
Okay.
back a couple sentences, please carry on.
Thank you very much. So the government has adopted policies that contribute to ending gender and race-based violence. And these include Canada's strategy to prevent and address gender-based violence, the national strategy to combat human trafficking, the comprehensive violence prevention strategy, and the distinctions-based mental health strategy. Other strategies are also in development. As you know, the National Indigenous Justice Strategy and the Federal Action Plan on LGBTQ2. In tandem, many initiatives and programs have been launched, such as the First Nations Child and Family Services Program, mental wellness in communities, shelters for Indigenous women and their children fleeing violence. Pour les membres des familles des survivants,
for members of families of survivor, there is a national hotline and also liaison agents. The federal government has taken concrete action, but a lot remains to be done. Families and communities want to see concrete results, transformative results.
Change will take time and will require ongoing collaboration with Indigenous families, survivors, partners, organizations, provinces, territories, and municipalities. Miigwech, merci, thank you.
Miigwech to you as well. So thank you so much. We're now going to pass it over to Indigenous Services at Ian Kelly. And Ian, when you see this green pen start twirling, that means your time is coming. So if we could wrap it up, I'm passing the floor over to you.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you from the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you about the important work that Indigenous Services Canada is doing to support Indigenous women, girls, families, and to us LGBTQI plus people facing gender-based violence. One of the programs offered by Indigenous Services Canada is the Family Violence Prevention Program. The underlying objective of this program is to empower Indigenous communities to design and deliver services and programming that best meet their unique needs. While this program has long been limited to an on-reserve shelter focus, in 2021 we obtained authority to support shelters and transition homes to meet the needs of First Nations, both on and off reserve, Inuit, Métis, 2S LGBTQI plus people, and Indigenous and urban communities. Through this program, the Government of Canada supports the ongoing operation of a network of 46 emergency shelters for First Nations on reserve. These shelters provide emergency support and a vital place of refuge for survivors escaping violent situations. The shelters we fund are independently operated and Indigenous-led, and we work with partners to identify priorities for violence prevention activities. We have heard from our partners that the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in an increase in both the number of cases and the severity of intimate partner violence, with a greater impact on Indigenous women. Our most recent data shows that over 3,700 women and 1,800 children have been served by this network of shelters. However, the pandemic has seen a 20 to 30% increase in gender-based violence in all parts of Canada, as you know. Shelter staff have not been able to report on all of their critical activities as of yet through what the World Health Organization has dubbed the shadow pandemic. But the work done by Women's Shelters Canada, for example, reinforces what we are hearing on the ground. In addition to providing a place of refuge, some shelters directly offer wraparound services, including counseling, addiction services, employment and housing support, skills development, training, and childcare, while others coordinate access to these supports. Indigenous service providers determine what approaches work best in their communities, and there have been many innovations. For example, while most shelters provide only limited access to men, one shelter we support provides a multi-gender environment that uses traditional teachings to promote a holistic approach to support the entire family. The Family Violence Prevention Program also provides funding for the delivery of culturally relevant violence prevention activities that are holistic and inclusive of communities, including men and boys. Violence prevention activities include trauma-informed care for youth and families, empowerment projects for girls, healing circles, and cultural and land-based activities that build community networks. Since 2017, we have been supporting the Moose Hide campaign, which engages Indigenous and non-Indigenous men and boys in activities focused on ending violence against women and children. The organization has successfully developed a network of partners and promotes awareness through promotional products and community activities. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls has highlighted the critical gaps needed to better address the needs of those victimized by violence. In May 2020, the Government of Canada announced it would support 10 new shelters in First Nations communities and two shelters in the territories through a joint initiative between the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation and Indigenous Services Canada. While any additions to the shelter network are an improvement, the inquiry reinforced just how much more work has to be done to address the unique needs, particularly in the North, where the rate of violence is highest and shelter access is low. Furthermore, in July 2021, the Comprehensive Violence Prevention Strategy was announced. This $724 million initiative includes expanding access to supports across Canada for Indigenous women, children, families, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people. This strategy will support 38 new shelters and 50 transition or second stage homes for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis across the country, including on and off reserve in the North and in urban areas. These new investments will be jointly implemented by ISK and CMHC. Indigenous partners are essential in how our program evolves. For example, we're working with the National Aboriginal Circle Against Family Violence to redevelop our funding formula and reporting tools in collaboration with shelter workers. New shelters and transition homes are realized through decisions made by both steering and selection committees comprised of representatives from First Nations, Inuit, Métis, 2S LGBTQIA+, and Indigenous urban communities. In addition to infrastructure, this funding includes ongoing supports for culturally relevant violence prevention activities that broaden the continuum of care. Enhanced services include case management, programs to reduce the risk of sexual exploitation, as well as culturally appropriate mental health and addiction supports. While these new supports, communities will have expanded access to shelters and second stage housing that enable survivors to transition into lives free from violence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kenny. Because our time is getting so tight, I'm going to pass it over to the Public Health Agency of Canada and to Karen McKinnon. Karen, you've got 5.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you for the invitation to address this committee as part of your study of intimate partner and domestic violence in Canada. I join you today from the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin Nation in Ottawa to speak to you about the Public Health Agency of Canada's role in addressing and preventing intimate partner and domestic violence in light of the significant and long-term physical and mental health impacts of these forms of violence. I appreciate the opportunity to share this context with you today as you undertake this important study. The Public Health Agency of Canada sees family violence, which includes intimate partner violence, as a serious public health issue. We are particularly concerned about violence in relationships, since these forms of violence are often repeated or ongoing and can lead to complex trauma. The effects of violence on physical and mental health can persist throughout the life course and can affect future generations. For example, women who have experienced intimate partner violence face high rates of injury, chronic pain, sleep disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, and substance use-related harm. It is also important to recognize the negative consequences of intimate partner violence on children who are exposed to violence in the home or who experience its aftermath. Children exposed to intimate partner violence are at increased risk of a wide range of psychological and behavioral problems, including low self-esteem, depression and anxiety, as well as increased risks of aggression, delinquency, violence, as well as risk-taking behaviors. As my colleagues have already indicated, intimate partner violence is widespread with particular prevalence for women, girls, and gender-diverse people. The COVID-19 pandemic has increased risks for family violence as families face heightened stress and real or perceived challenges accessing support or prevention programs. At the Public Health Agency of Canada, we address family violence from a public health perspective. We support the design and delivery of interventions that promote safe relationships and that support the health of survivors of family violence. Our programming seeks to fill a strategic gap in the field by testing the effectiveness of interventions and increasing the evidence base of what works, for whom, and in what contexts. Through the Canada's strategy to prevent and address gender-based violence, the Public Health Agency of Canada is investing more than $8 million per year to prevent gender-based violence. This includes initiatives that prevent dating violence among teens and youth, promote positive parenting, and support service providers with tools to recognize and to safely respond to gender-based violence. In addition to this investment, we have, since 2015, invested over $6 million per year to support the health of survivors of family violence through guidance and training for professionals and through the delivery and testing of health promotion interventions. With Budget 2021's investment to work towards a national action plan to end gender-based violence, we have increased this investment by more than $3 million per year for a total of $9 million per year over the next 4 years. Across our investments, projects are trauma and violence informed, meaning that interventions take into account the impacts of trauma on a person's health, behavior, and their ability to effectively seek help. These initiatives help support survivors by equipping them with knowledge, ability, and supportive environments to reclaim and sustain their health and well-being. For example, we are learning how interventions that use the body, such as trauma-informed sports or dance programming, can be an important complement or alternative to traditional talk therapy. Some projects are grounded in Indigenous knowledge and have demonstrated how traditional arts and culture can be used to foster healing and connection. To help share what we are learning from these programs, we also support knowledge hubs in communities of practice. These connect funding recipients and other experts in the field and allow them to develop common ways to measure progress and share emerging findings with researchers and professionals in order to expand what we are learning beyond the direct reach of the funded projects. When violence occurs in relationships, it has far-reaching and tragic effects. Communities and community organizations across the country are doing impressive work, and the investments that we are making aim to increase the reach and impacts of these efforts. Thank you for your attention, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Yes.
Thanks so much, Karen. You're at 4 minutes and 43 seconds, so that gives us a few minutes to spare. So we're going to go on, and once again, we're at our 6-minute rounds. We're going to be starting off with Michelle Frary. Michelle, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of the witnesses today. What important work you all do, and what a delicate subject matter that is very challenging to solve and will forever be unfortunately happening. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. I have a few questions, and I'd like to start, whoever would, and I hope I get names correct here, and I think it was Mr. Kenny. I'm just curious who in the services provided, if there are Indigenous heads being taking care of this, Indigenous created, Indigenous delivered, if that makes sense. Does that question make sense of what I'm asking?
I think so, yes. What we do with the program is fund communities to put in place their own plans for either the operation of shelters, the building shelters, or the prevention programs themselves. But the actual making decisions about where shelters are constructed and the types of programming that get support, that very much is done by a steering committee of our Aboriginal Indigenous organizations across the country.
And so is it mandated that Indigenous are part of that steering committee?
Yes, that's how we approach it. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. My next question and I hope again, I believe it was Ms. McKinnon. You talk a lot about sort of the systemic trauma that can happen, and I'm wondering, of all the money that you are speaking of investing, is there money being invested into the media in terms of how we're educating people, but also in terms of self-regulation, dedicated to education, emotional regulation, and non-maladaptive coping mechanisms and stress? I heard you talk about the dance and that, but are you working with other avenues in terms of self-regulation to ensure that children from a very young age in their cognitive years are having the access to the resources they know of what a healthy relationship is and how to emotionally regulate?
So thank you very much. So while we don't necessarily invest in media per se, we certainly do invest in all of those prevention areas that you just named. And I could give you a couple of quick examples. So we have a program called Wise Guys run out of the University of Calgary, which is delivering and evaluating a community facilitated school-based healthy relationships program for grade 9 boys in Alberta. And that is essentially aimed at helping those participants identify and deconstruct both health harming and gender-based norms and work on their own emotional regulation and to be able to pursue healthy relationships. We have arranged.
Is there anything under the age of 10?
Under the age of 10. I'm not familiar with the age band for all of our programming, but certainly for teen dating violence, we would be looking at that tween to teen year specifically. That would be, we would also, I guess, have a couple of other programs about building connection that also is run out of Mothercraft. Okay. But we also have the program for ages 2 to 12 called SNAP, which is an evidence-based multi-component trauma-informed cognitive behavioral model that does provide a framework for teaching effective emotional regulation and self-control and problem-solving skills for kids. Yeah.
Fantastic. 2 questions I have left. I'm trying to run through them here so we don't run out of time. Indigenous Services Canada's Family Violence Prevention Program provides operational funding to 41 shelters for women and children living on reserve across the provinces and Yukon. These 41 shelters serve approximately 330 First Nations communities, which represent approximately 55% of all First Nations communities. In a study done by this committee in the 42nd Parliament, it was revealed that shelters funded through the Family Violence Prevention Program receive less operational funding than shelters funded by provinces and territories. Has the government taken any steps to fill the gap since 2019?
I think what you're referring to, that and an evaluation of the program that was done a few years ago indicated the gaps in the program. And I think what the things that we have seen, the expansion of the program over the last 2-3 years is attempting to address just that. And so looking at what kinds of resources can be made available to close the gap, both in terms of individual shelters, but also the number of shelters made available across the country. So that's very much what we are trying to do, to expand the network and to improve the O&M that's available to these shelters. So
how are you doing that? Sorry.
Well, by increasing our investments. So I think the focus over the last little while has been on expanding the number of shelters. I think, as I mentioned in my remarks, we're going from a network of 46 shelters that exist right now to we plan to have as many as just under 100. I think it's 96 or 97 shelters built across the country by 2026, if I'm not mistaken.
How do you allocate funds for shelter services, running the shelter versus the staff? Because in terms of sustainability, right, if you have staff burnout to ensure that they're fairly compensated, what are you doing in that avenue?
Well, we receive proposals from communities who are seeking to build new shelters and that sort of thing. The proposals for the new shelters that we are looking at now, the construction costs, as I mentioned earlier, CMHC is looking at the construction. The O&M looks at all of those costs, the staff requirements and that sort of thing, knowing that there's higher costs in some of the more remote and northern regions. And so there is a ballpark figure that we look at to just what makes sense, but those are all notional allocations that we try to take into account.
I'm going to try and squeeze one more question
here. You've got an awful chair who just won't let you, Michelle. Yeah. Sorry about that, lady. I'm going to actually now move the mic over to Sonia. Sonia, you've got 6.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all the officials for being with us today. My first question is to Ms. McKinnon. Ms. McKinnon, I see in December PHAC made a funding investment to 100,000 at Western University to develop a free evidence-based mobile app that will provide information to safely support survivors to intimate partner violence, those at risk. Can you tell us what outcomes you expect to see from this service? Are you aware of similar programs in other jurisdictions that have been successful at helping women?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, we're very pleased to have made that investment. And the My Plan Canada app is in fact based, I think, on an international example of this, and we have been able to import that into Canada and put this in place. Basically, it's early days, like we've just announced the funding, but the outcome, the objective of this will be to ensure that women have a safe ability to be able to text in their own home to this app and seek assistance if and when they need that. So it's because obviously you can't always use a telephone or something like that, or a voice connection, but having the ability through a safe app that allows for texting support allows people to develop a plan for themselves should they need to get themselves to a safer place than where they presently are. So I hope that helps answer the question.
And PHAC runs numerous programs across the country directed at teens to recognize, avoid, and escape from dating violence. Could you provide an overview of the issue and barriers that are unique to this age group?
Sure, happy to do that. So we know that for teens, who's at risk of teen dating violence? It's those who've grown up with a history of maltreatment, who have been maybe bullied or being bullied. They have friends who are aggressive. Perhaps they use substances. Some Two-Spirit LGBTQ2+ youth also experience teen dating violence, and some who have not disclosed their orientation. We know that essentially, if you look at something like the Health Behavior of School-Age Children survey, which is a self-reported survey of around 30,000 young people, we see in there that approximately 30% of Canadian youth in grades 9 and 10 have reported being victimized at some point in their lifetime. And about 1 in 5 have reported experienced physical dating violence, and about 1 in 10 have experienced sexual dating violence. So clearly this is an important issue. We know for younger women in particular, age 15 to 19, they're 8 times, for example, more likely than women aged 25 years and older to have been sexually assaulted by an intimate partner in the previous 12 months. So it's that really critical 15 to 19 year age range who, are just getting into their intimate lives and finding it very difficult sometimes to manage the amount of violence that they would be confronting. So it absolutely is a significant public health issue, because we know that unhealthy relationships can, when they become entrenched, can extend across a lifetime, of course, but also have intergenerational impacts as well. So I'll stop there because I don't want to take all the time, but just to give you a bit of an overview of the issue. Thank you.
Thank you for that. My next question is to Mr. Kenny. Mr. Kenny, Indigenous women and women experienced violence often rely to emergency shelter across Canada. Indigenous communities and other diverse communities in Canada required culturally specific support. Can you speak to how these culturally driven services lead to better results?
Well, I think this is as I mentioned, the underlying objective of the program, of the Family Violence Prevention Program, is to actually put in place supports that allow communities to decide what the best type of prevention activities, what type of culturally appropriate services are available. So there's a great deal of flexibility in what we offer, and we work with both local and national level partners to try to put a frame around the kinds of things that we might want to emphasize in our funding. But the assumption of the program is very much that what is culturally appropriate is also very regional, very local, and should be determined by local communities themselves. So that's, as I said, very much something that is built into the program. And I think over time, as we expand the number of shelters that are operating as a result of the program, we'll have a much better sense of just how that is translated into results. So thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. McKinnon, mental health is another big component here. How the government working to ensure that all women have access to mental health services, especially given the effects of this pandemic, and what kind of the awareness are you doing there?
Thank you very much. Essentially, I could just point to something that happens through our Health Canada colleagues as a really important piece, which is Wellness Together Canada, which is that phone and chat line and email and online portal that allows people to seek a range of kind of help known as stepped care. So you can seek all kinds of different levels. I see I'm getting the wrap up there, so I will just pause there, but we're doing a number of things in support, in the area of support. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Adrian, you have your 6 minutes. Go for it.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank the witnesses for being with us today. It is important. This is such an important issue. When we talk about Indigenous affairs or nations, it's nice that solutions are found together, having in mind the culture. My questions are for Mr. Kenny and Mrs. Maricomo, whoever wants to answer. There has been this report of Indigenous and women's who have been assassinated or disappeared. You did talk about shelters. In some Indigenous communities, there are no shelters whatsoever. Shelters are one thing, but how can women be empowered to get out of the circle of poverty and violence? They need an alternative, social housing or something, community housing. So what has your departments done to stop violence within Indigenous communities? Is it enough? Should we increase? Should we offer more?
Perhaps raise an excellent point in that the things that are leading to the need for women's shelters on reserve or anywhere are the causes are things that also need to be part of the solution. And I know that that the Department in Indigenous Services Canada is looking at housing, looking more and more at infrastructure investments and things that can be done even in urban communities. I know that's something that our branch is involved in, trying to create truly a continuum of things that prevent family violence. Just with respect to shelters, again, we mentioned that we're moving more and more into the territory of transitional housing, which allows women and children and families to move from the shelter environment into something that allows them to reintegrate into a more safer environment. So I think this is all part of a more holistic solution that we're trying to build into all of our programming at the department, and looking at things out of a siloed type perspective. That I hope actually is one thing that the work that CIRNA is leading through the MMIWG response, and that we can look interdepartmentally at some of these things more holistically.
Merci beaucoup de la question. J'aimerais ajouter.
Well, thank you so much. You've raised an excellent issue when you talk about housing. We've invested a lot in Inuit housing for the Métis, also for more independent communities. Since 2018, we've had a best practice approach for these housing projects, but priorities are established by Indigenous people, by Indigenous partners. And I would like to inform you that for Inuit housing, up to now, we've invested over 10 years. We're in the 4th year of this 10-year investment plan, and 400 new housing units have been built in Inuit communities, and many are under construction. We're a bit under the 50% percentage from our target, yet a lot has been done in matters of housing. But we also have an alternative to this housing. We've invested in in offering housing in an alternative way. For Métis, what is important is grants. Grants for collectivities, for communities, so they can build adequate housing. Thank you.
En partie positivement au rapport national sur les femmes et les filles autochtones, mais il pourrait y avoir encore plus qui pourrait être fait.
Adrian, there is a problem with the...
Sorry. Okay. So as I was saying, yes, a lot of good things have been done in reaction to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, but more can be done. And we could look further in the report because a lot of recommendations have not been implemented recently. And Madawan, there was a lack of electricity, no drinking water. So this is the cycle of poverty. We have to look at the problem. We have to look at the problem with a holistic approach. Allow me. Thank you for the question. Yeah, there are underlying causes of violence against women and girls from different gender in the Indigenous communities. The answer to the inquiry is that a lot has been done so far. I mentioned the investments, the programs, the departments, more than 23 departments are working with 2 representatives of our department. So a lot of things are being done currently.
To wrap that up, I'm going to move it over to Leah. I'm sure she wants to hear more about this too. Leah, you've got 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair. I asked this to the previous panel. As you know, Indigenous women and girls are 12 times more likely to go missing or murdered than the rest of the population. And this was reported in the National Inquiry that was released in 2019. It's now 2022, still no national action plan. What date will that national action plan be released?
Thank you very much for the question, and I'm very happy to clarify. The National Action Plan on MMIWG was launched on June 3rd of last year, 2021. And this National Action Plan includes chapters that were Indigenous. It is an Indigenous-led National Action Plan. And there are chapters that are included in this National Action Plan. Chapters include families and survivors. Indigenous family and survivors created their own action plan. The urban group created an action plan. The 2SL group created an action plan. There were chapters by Inuit, First Nations, Métis, the data and research communities. I'm sorry.
With all due respect, the former commissioner disagreed with the progress of the National Action Plan. And in fact, the federal government response, I'm going to quote her. She said, the federal government seems to be either unwilling or unable to provide necessary leadership to move ahead with the National Action Plan, especially without any concrete timelines. And this was actually, this opinion was actually shared by the former president of the Native Women's Association of Canada that gave the federal government a failing grade. And in fact, was so frustrated, came out with a list of recommendations in response to the failure of the federal government to act, including appointing an independent mechanism to report to Parliament annually on the implementation of recommendations. Has an independent mechanism been set up?
Thank you very much for your question. The National Action Plan was launched with Indigenous partners, organizations, very broadly, including provinces, territories, and the federal government. And the government is not waiting on these plans to be carried out. This Indigenous-led process, many of those chapters are now, and the Indigenous partners are now developing their own implementation plan. The federal government is also developing its implementation plan, but we're not waiting on the implementation plan to take some concrete
building on
actions.
that, I've heard a lot about plans and meetings. How many calls to justice have been implemented to date out of the 231?
Out of the 231 calls to justice, they are very broad reaching. The calls for justice, as you know, are addressed at the federal government, are addressed at the provinces, territories, they're addressed at civil society, and they're multi kind of faceted. So the underlying themes, and I'll come back to a question that was just asked previously. The important are the themes and the underlying root causes. And that's what the government is acting on, is the underlying root causes.
Thank you. Just because I have limited amount of time, and this is a very important topic, it's been identified as a genocide. What is the total amount of funding that has been provided in this last fiscal year in response to the calls to justice? What's the total amount of funding?
Thank you very much for the question once again. We have in budget 2021, we invested $2.2 billion specifically to address the root causes of gender and race-based violence for Indigenous women, girls, and
Over how many years? 2.2 billion over how many years?
It varies. It can be between 5 and 6 years.
Okay, so how much?
So it depends on the
annually?
initiatives.
So if you break that down annually, how and we know that it's a crisis, how much is being provided annually to address the genocide of violence against Indigenous women and girls?
So I don't have the answers on the breakdown at my fingertips. There are 43, obviously there are 43 budget investments, but we can follow up with the written to your question. And all of these are really to address the tragedy of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and to us.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Mr. Kenny, you spoke about one of the areas that was identified around violence against Indigenous women and girls is infrastructure. I know in Winnipeg, after 9 years of advocating, the place that the former Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations identified as ground zero for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, we finally got an allotment of funding, not adequate, for a 24/7 safe space in response to one of the calls to justice from the National Inquiry. How much money has been invested in infrastructure since it's been identified as a critical need to address this crisis?
Just to clarify the question, with investments for the initiative nationally, or are you speaking with the
nationally
specifically?
Nationally, and also specific to Manitoba.
Yeah, I think probably best I can get back to the committee with the specific dollar values on those, but both nationally and with the Manitoba focus as well. That's probably best.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
Yeah, if we can get those back, that would be wonderful.
Great.
I'm now just going to turn the floor over, and it's going to be Leila. Leila, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your guys' presentations today. To kind of carry on with some of the question lines that were brought forward by some of my colleagues, I just wanted to ask some questions around the Family Violence Protection Program, and wondering what
I think she has just stalled out here for a second. Leila, you're having some connectivity problems.
All right. I don't know what I can do to improve the connectivity issue, so perhaps can you skip to the next person and I'll try fixing this.
Okay, with everybody, what we're going to do is I will go to Jenna. Jenna, I'll give you your 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to Leila if that's okay with you. Okay, so Jenna, you're on the floor.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much to the witnesses that have joined us today and for all of their great work. I think I'll start with Madame Marin-Comeau. Given the diversity of Indigenous communities across our country, what funding is available specifically for Northern communities? And how has that been deployed for the shelter network and then for other community partners for individuals who are trying to escape intimate partner violence?
So thank you very much for the question. I don't have the entire spectrum of the Northern investments. However, I do know that there are some housing infrastructure investments through Budget 2021. There are also, as you heard, shelters. There's also a Northern focus for community-based prevention programs. But perhaps what I can do is we'll take that question and we can respond in a more thorough response for the Northern aspect of investments.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate that information. For Mr. Kenny, recently, Senator Damasco commissioned an Environics poll examining the issues of concern for women in Canada. And the results indicated that 77% of Canadians believe that improving conditions of Indigenous women are a very important problem for women in Canada today. I'm sure that comes as no surprise. You've alluded a bit already about some of the investments in shelters, but I was hoping you could share more details with respect to what supports and resources are available for Indigenous women that are fleeing gender-based violence or intimate partner violence, both with respect to some of the investments you've kind of touched on already in the shelter system and any other resources available.
Well, I think we've talked about the shelter system that we are trying to expand and improve. I think what you may be interested in is some of the projects that are funded through the prevention component of the program. And as I mentioned, those are very much community driven. And if it would be helpful, I think maybe what we could do is to get back with the committee with a little bit of sense of what kinds of those types of services and what types of activities might get funded through our program. But just as a just sort of a general overview of things, there's a number of activities that are funded through the program, such as counseling. I think I mentioned a few: addictions training, child support programs, that sort of thing, traditional teachings, those kinds of things. It's a very wide range of activities, and they're very much driven by community need. So if it's helpful, we can maybe put a finer point on that and respond back to the committee if that's suitable.
Sure, excellent. Those details would be great. I think another important part to perhaps highlight and drill down in today is the resources that are available or in place for Indigenous women in the LGBTQ2S community, or for Indigenous women who may be disabled. Can you speak to programs or services in place specifically for them?
Again, those communities are part of the prevention programming that we have available. We try to notionally keep an eye open for proposals so that we make sure that those types of initiatives aiming those groups are covered. But there's not like a dedicated set of funding or a basket of services that we target specifically for those groups. So again, maybe just a bit more of a sense of the types of activities that we have funded through the proposals that we have funded so far might give you a better sense of just what kinds of things are supported through the program.
Excellent. And obviously where I'm going here is the importance of that and knowing that there's been some good work done that we should really be discussing it and highlighting. I think I'm out of time. If I'm, yes.
20 seconds left if there's
20
something really
seconds.
quick.
So you mentioned growing the number of shelters, 46 now, and I think you referenced almost 100 within 2026. Can you speak to that trajectory?
Right. So in 2020, there was, I guess, an immediate initiative to expand the network to an additional 12. So there was 10 more announced on First Nation communities, plus 2 in the territories. And then finally, after that, we have moved into the most recent initiative in 2021, where we're expanding an additional 38 shelters, plus 50 transition homes. So all told, that should bring us to a doubling of what is in place actually right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to take the floor back to Leila. Leila, you have your 5 minutes.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I've discovered that the Meg strip on my phone turns my laptop off, so that's fun. But to get back to this important work at hand, we know that many Indigenous women and girls fleeing violence leave their home communities, and so while you were talking about the shelters, what specific actions are you doing to support these vulnerable women and girls and 2S plus members of society that are in urban centers or in off-reserve settings, and specifically, how are you putting into play the calls to action?
I think that question's for me. Yeah, again, the transition, moving to the transitional homes is a big piece for us, and that's not just going to be limited on First Nation communities, but that's an important piece of the puzzle. Is that yes, it's great to have shelters in place for people to seek refuge when it's absolutely necessary, but there needs to be some sort of step that allows people to transition back into some sort of a different environment. So the transition homes is going to be an important piece for us, part of that puzzle. But again, there's the work that a lot of these communities do, and we'll be able to support more and more urban communities.
Sorry, we just don't have very much time. So could you provide this committee with a list of all of the transitional housing stock that is available coast to coast to coast, so that we can see where perhaps there are deficits in some of our communities, and to see where perhaps more investments need to be made to ensure that we are really taking care of this?
Just to be clear, the transition homes is a new element for us, and so we're just moving into that direction now. But
so how many transition homes exist currently right now?
None of them have been set up yet, so it's a new element that was just announced.
What is the
last
timeline to have the first transition home operational?
It was announced in 2021. We're starting to receive proposals now, so we're hoping to have these in place within the next, some of them at least within the next year or two. But we can provide more details on that.
Yes, if you could please provide more details around that, as well as you highlighted that there are 10 new shelters being built. Where? And the 2 that are being built in the territories where? If you could just provide that in writing, that would be spectacular. And to go one step further, what is being done to ensure that an intersectional lens is being applied and that all supports being delivered are culturally sensitive and responsive to make sure that we are not further traumatizing or adding vulnerability to these people?
Again, we work really closely with the communities themselves and through the organizations nationally. Our regional offices at ISK work really closely with communities to sort of identify what those needs are and try to build that into their proposals. So again, it's very much a bottom-up type of approach, but definitely intersectionality and a number of considerations are things that we try to bring to the review of our proposals.
And then just to touch on, which jurisdictions specifically, or First Nations or Métis or Inuit communities specifically, are perhaps leading the edge on this that we could look to as potential places to expand on those?
Again, I will get back to the committee, but I would think some of the shelters that we have in place, we could benefit from the existence of those First Nations shelters, but probably in Ontario, there's a number of initiatives going on in Ontario that we can.
Okay, but and if you could really put that precision on, that would be much appreciated. And I think I'm probably close to out of time.
Actually, you've got 45 seconds, so 20 seconds for you, 20 seconds for him.
I'll give the rest of my time to back to the committee. Thanks.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And Emanuela, I see your committee member has joined us as well. We've got the cat. So anyway, it's wonderful. We're going to pass this on. We have got 2.5 minutes to Andrea. Adrian, you've got the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here to start the study on violence against women and domestic violence. I have a question for Ms. McKinnon. You talked about what's happening internationally and what can inspire us. You talked about the app for asking for help, but are there other countries or other initiatives that we could look to implement new public policies here in Canada?
Thank you very much for the question. I would suggest there are a number of countries that have done some great work in this regard. Australia would be one of them, but what I could definitely offer to the committee is for us to take that question away and to provide some answers in terms of what we see in terms of those international best practices that may be helpful for the committee in its study. Particularly from the point of view of family and gender-based and intimate partner violence. So I think we'd like to suggest that would be the best way to approach this question so that we give you a fulsome look at that.
En effet, j'ai eu des échanges.
I was able to speak with representatives of the Australian consulate who want to expand the definition of violence and include psychological violence and control. And it goes beyond sexual violence or physical violence. Perhaps you could tell us more about that. Would it be important to legislate on coercion and manipulation and the different cases of violence?
Yeah, this is an important issue, and I would suggest that for the Public Health Agency of Canada, we would not necessarily be in the best position to answer that. It's likely a question for justice. We would see the impacts here in terms of coercive control from a health perspective, and what I can say there is, like any other form of control or sexual violence or physical violence, what we sort of see are those incredibly profound health impacts that will last across the life course and often can even extend into the next generation. And so it's very, very important to address all forms of control. Thank you very much.
Ms. McKinnon, and we're going to pass it over to Leah. Leah, you have 2.5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just going back to the National Action Plan, part of the reason I'm indicating there is no plan, I want to share a couple of quotes. Sheila Day, Chair of the Human Rights Committee for the Feminist Alliance for International Action in response to what was released, said this: we were looking and expecting concrete action with responsibilities assigned, timelines, and resource allocations, she said. Instead, what we have is a collection of federal, provincial, territorial statements that were issued to us this morning. Judy Wilson, Grand Chief Judy Wilson from the Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs said, it was a delayed justice and denied justice. So we really don't have a national action plan. It's been highly criticized. There is no plan. There are no timelines. The federal government also committed to implementing all 231 calls for justice out of the national inquiry. That also includes calls to justice 4.5 to implement a guaranteed livable basic income, because it was very clear in the inquiry that there was a direct correlation between poverty and higher rates of violence. Is your department currently looking at a plan with timelines to implement calls for justice 4.5 for a guaranteed livable basic income?
Thank you very much for your question. The 23 departments are collaborating on an implementation plan with concrete timelines, et cetera, for the federal pathway. I think that's the first answer to your question. The second piece is that the guaranteed livable income has been identified as a priority by Indigenous partners throughout all of their chapters and throughout the National Action Plan. And so the government is committed to looking at this in the future.
When will the government be implementing a guaranteed livable basic income? It did promise to implement all the 231 calls for justice that came out of the inquiry, which includes 4.5. So, which is why I'm asking, are there plans to implement a guaranteed livable basic income?
This is a question for our colleague department in ESDC, so we'll take that back. Thank you very much.
Well,
I'd appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I'd really like to thank Ms. McKinnon, Mr. Kenny, and Mrs. Marin Camo. Thank you so much. This has been a great panel today. I'm just going to let you know our next meeting is going to be held, of course, on Tuesday, February the 8th. It's from 3:30 till 5:30. We'll be hearing from the Sudbury Women's Centre, the Women's Shelters Canada, West Central Women's Resource Centre, the London Abuse Centre, and the Fédération des Maisons d'Hébergement pour Femmes. So I'd like to thank everybody for the great work today. Do I have approval to adjourn today's meeting? Wonderful. Have a great weekend, everybody. And thank you so much to our clerk, Stephanie, for filling in, and see everybody on Tuesday. Thank you.